The blood was warm on his knuckles. Bruce Connolly stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, the cracked lip, the swollen eye, the thin line of red tracing down from his nostril. His 62-year-old face looked back at him like a stranger's. He pressed a paper towel to his nose and watched the white fabric bloom crimson. He had been punched before. In college, in the military, in a bar fight 30 years ago that he barely remembered. But he had never been punched by his son. In-law. I always thought he was my daughter's savior, Bruce thought, watching the blood seep through the paper until that fist connected with my face. That is when I realized I had been having dinner with a devil. The bathroom door was closed. Outside, he could hear Leah crying. His daughter, his only child, the girl he had raised alone after her mother died. He could hear Henry's voice, smooth and reasonable, explaining why Bruce deserved what he had received. He is confused, sweetheart. He is getting older. You saw how he was acting. The savings he had scraped together over 30 years of double shifts and skipped vacations. Gone. Transferred to an account he didn't control for a business that didn't exist, at the request of a man who didn't love his daughter. He had been a fool, but he wasn't going to be a fool for much longer. He pulled out his phone and typed a single message to a number he hadn't called in 20 years. Marcus, I need you. It is about Henry. Then he opened the bathroom door and walked back into the lion's den. 3 years earlier, Henry Cain had arrived in their lives like an answer to a prayer. Leah had met him at a charity gala, the kind of event Bruce would never attend, the kind where champagne flowed and designer gowns whispered against marble floors. Henry was 41, handsome in a polished way, with salt and pepper hair and the easy confidence of a man who had never been told no. He was, by all appearances, perfect. He owned a successful export business. He drove a German sedan. He spoke 3 languages and played the piano well enough to impress Leah's friends. He brought flowers when he came to dinner. He asked Bruce about his work, his health, his opinions, things no one else had asked about since Bruce's wife passed. He is the one, Dad, Leah had said, her eyes shining. I know it. Bruce wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that his daughter, his brilliant, beautiful, too trusting daughter, had finally found someone worthy of her. But something nagged at him, something small, a flicker behind Henry's eyes when he thought no one was watching. A moment, just a moment, when the mask slipped. They married 6 months later. Bruce paid for the wedding, $40,000 he would never see again. He told himself it didn't matter. She was his daughter. This was what fathers did. The first year was good, or seemed good. Leah was happy. They came for Sunday dinners. Henry helped Bruce in the garden. They talked about the future, about grandchildren, about the house Henry was going to buy for them. Then the cracks began to show. It started with a phone call. Dad, Henry has this incredible opportunity, Leah said, her voice breathless with excitement. A shipping contract, huge margins, but he needs capital up front, just for 60 days. Bruce hesitated. How much? 500,000. The number hung in the air like a grenade. Leah, that is my entire retirement, everything your mother and I saved. I know, Dad, but Henry says the return is almost double. In 60 days you'll have over $1 million. You could retire for real travel. Do all the things you never got to do. Bruce asked to speak with Henry directly. Henry came over that evening. He brought wine. He brought charts, spreadsheets, contracts, documents that looked legitimate, stamped with logos and signatures that seemed official. He explained the deal with the patience of a teacher instructing a slow student. It is a sure thing, Bruce. The buyer is a Fortune 500 company. The goods are already in transit. The only holdup is the customs bond. He smiled. 60 days tops. He never saw the money again. 60 days passed, then 90, then 6 months. Every time Bruce asked about the investment, Henry had an answer. The buyer was delayed. The customs paperwork had been rejected. The shipping lanes were congested due to a strike in Rotterdam. There was always a reason, always an excuse, always a new deadline just around the corner. Then Henry and Leah lost their apartment. Temporary cash flow issues, Henry explained. We just need a place to stay for a few weeks. Bruce hesitated. His house wasn't large. It was just him rattling around in the rooms where he had raised Leah, where her mother had died, but it was his sanctuary, his last piece of ground. Dad, please, Leah said. We have nowhere else to go. He let them move in. That was the moment Henry's mask began to crack. The first week was awkward but civil. Henry helped with dishes. He fixed a leaky faucet. He asked Bruce about his day. The second week, Henry stopped helping. The third week, he started making demands. Bruce, we need to talk about the house, Henry said one evening, cornering Bruce in the kitchen. Leah and I can't live like this forever. We need space, privacy. What are you suggesting? Henry's smile was thin. The house is in your name, but it is family property. Leah is your only heir. It is really her house as much as yours. We should think about transferring the title for tax purposes. Bruce felt a chill run down his spine. Number, Bruce. I said no. That night, Bruce heard Henry and Leah arguing in the guest room. He couldn't make out the words, but he heard the tone. Henry's voice sharp and cruel, Leah's voice small and pleading. Something had changed. Something was wrong. But when Bruce asked Leah about it the next morning, she smiled and said everything was fine. She had always been a terrible liar. Bruce started feeling sick in the 4th month. It was subtle at first, a headache that wouldn't go away, dizziness when he stood up too fast, a fog in his brain that made it hard to concentrate on simple tasks, balancing his checkbook, remembering appointments, finding his keys. He mentioned it to his doctor. The doctor ran tests. Everything came back normal. Probably just age, the doctor said. Stress, lack of sleep. Bruce accepted the explanation. He was 62 after all, old enough for his body to start failing, old enough for his mind to start slipping. But then he found the bottle. It was hidden in the back of Henry's closet, behind a stack of sweaters. A small brown bottle with no label, filled with clear liquid. Bruce hadn't been snooping. He had been looking for a box of Christmas decorations that Leah had asked for. The closet door was open. The bottle caught his eye. He didn't know what it was, but something about it made his skin crawl. He took a photo. Then he put the bottle back and closed the closet door. That night, he called Marcus. Marcus Webb was a private investigator. In another life, he had been Bruce's partner in the military, a sharp-eyed intelligence officer who could read a man's lies from across a room. They had stayed in touch over the years, though Bruce had never needed his services. Until now. Tell me everything, Marcus said. From the beginning. Bruce told him about Henry, about the perfect courtship, the quick marriage, the $500,000 investment that had vanished. About the lost apartment, the move into Bruce's house, the subtle shift in Henry's behavior. About the headaches, the dizziness, the fog in his brain. About the bottle. Marcus listened without interrupting. When Bruce finished, there was a long silence on the line. Don't eat or drink anything Henry gives you, Marcus said. Not water, not coffee, not a single bite of food. Do you understand? Bruce's blood went cold. You think he is poisoning me? I think I need to run some tests. Can you get a sample of that liquid? I can try. Do it. And Bruce, don't confront him. Not yet. If he is what I think he is more dangerous than you can imagine. Marcus called back 3 days later. The liquid in the bottle was a benzodiazepine derivative, a potent sedative often used to incapacitate elderly victims. In small doses, it caused confusion, memory loss, and fatigue. In larger doses, it could cause respiratory failure. Henry wasn't just stealing your money, Marcus said. He was preparing the ground for your natural death. A few more months of that stuff, and they would have found you in your chair one morning. Heart failure, they would have said, old age, and Leah would have inherited everything. Bruce sat down heavily in his chair. The room spun around him. He has been in our house for 6 months, Bruce whispered. He has been poisoning me for 6 months. Longer, probably. The symptoms you described. They started before he moved in, didn't they? Bruce thought back. The headaches had started around the same time Henry had begun coming over for Sunday dinners. The dizziness had started a few weeks later. Yes, Bruce said. Yes, they did. Then he has been dosing you from the beginning. The investment was just the first course. The house was the second. Your death was the third. Bruce closed his eyes. He thought about Leah, about her smile, her trust, her blind faith in the man she had married. What do I do? He asked. Marcus's voice was hard. You let me do my job. Marcus worked quickly. Within a week, he had assembled a dossier that made Bruce's blood run cold. Henry Cain did not exist. The name was a fabrication. A mask worn by a man with many masks. His real name was Harold Rickman. And Harold Rickman was a predator. Marcus sent Bruce a file. Pages of police reports, court documents, newspaper clippings. Harold Rickman had been active for 20 years, moving from state to state, city to city, always one step ahead of the law. His method was always the same: find a vulnerable family, charm his way in, and systematically strip them of everything they owned. His previous victims included a widow in Florida. He had married her, drained her bank accounts, and disappeared. She died of a heart attack 6 weeks later. The autopsy was inconclusive. An elderly couple in Arizona. He had befriended them, moved into their guest house, and convinced them to sign over their property. They were found dead in their bed. Carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty heater. A retired teacher in Oregon. She had given him $300,000 for a business opportunity. She was now living in a state-funded nursing home, her mind destroyed by the same drugs Harold had been feeding Bruce. Bruce stared at the photographs Marcus had included. The faces of Harold's victims, the faces of the families who had trusted him, loved him, welcomed him into their homes. That could have been us, Bruce thought. That would have been us if I hadn't found the bottle. He looked at the final page of the dossier, a photograph of Harold Rickman. Not the polished, charming Henry Cain, but the real man. The man behind the mask. The eyes were the same, cold, calculating. Empty. Bruce had seen those eyes across the dinner table 100 times. He had never known what he was looking at. Bruce confronted Leah the next morning. He sat her down in the kitchen. The same kitchen where she had eaten breakfast as a child, where her mother had taught her to bake cookies, where the family had gathered for holidays and celebrations. He placed the dossier on the table between them. Leah, he said, I need to tell you something about your husband. She looked at the dossier. She did not open it. Dad, please, not again. Leah, he is not who you think he is. His name isn't Henry Cain. It is Harold Rickman. He is a con artist. He has been married 3 times before. He is wanted in 4 states, and he has been poisoning me. Leah's face went pale, then it went red. That is insane, she said. That is absolutely insane. Look at the file. Look at the evidence. I don't need to look at anything. Henry loves me. He loves this family. You are just jealous. You've been against him from the beginning. Bruce felt something crack inside his chest. Leah, please. Number, she stood up. You are the one who has been acting strange. You are the one who has been paranoid. You are the one who can't remember anything anymore. Her voice was shaking. Maybe Henry is right. Maybe you need to be somewhere safe. Bruce stared at his daughter, his only child, the girl he had raised alone, sacrificed for, loved beyond all reason. Are you saying you believe him over me? Leah didn't answer. She turned and walked out of the kitchen. The door slammed. Bruce sat alone at the table, the dossier open in front of him, and felt the weight of his daughter's betrayal settle onto his shoulders like a physical thing. She had chosen Henry. She had chosen the devil. And now Bruce had to save her from herself. Bruce called Marcus that night. "She won't listen," Bruce said. "She is too deep in his web." "I know," Marcus said. "That is why we need to go around her." Bruce listened as Marcus laid out the plan. It was simple, brutal. Effective phase 1, the media. Marcus had contacts at 3 major news outlets, journalists who specialized in investigative reporting, who had been looking for a story like Harold Rickman for years. Bruce agreed to go on the record, to tell his story, to show his face. The article ran 4 days later. The headline was simple: "He married my daughter. Then he tried to kill me." The response was immediate. Other victims came forward. Families in Florida, Arizona, Oregon, people who had lost everything to Harold Rickman, who had been too ashamed to speak, who had been waiting for someone else to break the silence. Within a week, the story had gone viral. Phase 2, the law. Marcus had also contacted the FBI. The Bureau had been tracking Harold Rickman for years, building a case, waiting for the right moment to strike. Bruce's evidence, the dossier, the bottle, the financial records, was the final piece they needed. Arrest warrants were issued. Extradition papers were filed. An FBI task force was assembled. Phase 3, the trap. Bruce invited Henry to dinner. "I've been thinking about what you said," Bruce told him, his voice calm and steady. "About the house. About the title transfer. Maybe you are right. Maybe it is time." He didn't know about the dossier. He didn't know about the FBI. He didn't know that Bruce had been recording every conversation for the past 2 weeks. "I am so glad you've come around, Bruce," Henry said, clapping him on the shoulder. "This is the best decision you've ever made." Bruce smiled. "I'll have the papers ready on Friday dinner at 7. "Perfect." Friday night arrived. Bruce set the table. The good china, the crystal glasses, the candles that Leah's mother had loved. He cooked a pot roast, Leah's favorite, the recipe that had been passed down through 3 generations. Henry arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. He was alone. Leah had a headache, he said. She was resting. "That is fine," Bruce said. "We can still talk." They sat down to dinner. Henry poured himself a glass of wine. Bruce poured himself water. "So," Henry said, leaning back in his chair, "the papers." "Right. The papers." Bruce reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. He placed it on the table between them. Henry reached for it. Bruce put his hand on top of the envelope. "Before you open that," Bruce said, "I want you to know something." Henry's smile faltered. "What is that?" "I know who you are, Harold." The room went silent. Henry's face changed. The mask didn't just slip. It shattered. The charming son-in-law disappeared, and in his place sat something cold and reptilian, a predator who had been caught. "I don't know what you are talking about," Henry said. "Yes, you do." Bruce's voice was calm, steady, the voice of a man who had already won. "I know about Florida, Arizona, Oregon. I know about the bottle in your closet. I know about the $500,000, and I know that the FBI is waiting outside." Henry's eyes darted to the window. The curtains were drawn. "You are lying. Am I?" Bruce stood up. He walked to the front door and opened it. The driveway was full of black SUVs. Henry lunged. He was faster than Bruce expected. But Bruce had been waiting for this. He stepped aside, and Henry crashed into the doorframe. Before he could recover, agents were swarming through the door, hands grabbing, voices shouting, handcuffs clicking. "Harold Rickman, you are under arrest." Bruce watched them take him. He watched the mask crumble completely, watched the rage and fear and desperation flood across Henry's face. And then he watched the agents lead him out. The door closed. The house was quiet. Bruce walked back to the table and picked up the manila envelope. Inside was not a property transfer. It was a copy of the arrest warrant. He had never intended to sign anything. He had intended to end this. Harold, was convicted 6 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. The bottle, the financial records, the testimony of 3 previous victims. He was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, with the possibility of more charges pending from other states. Leah did not attend the trial. She had left the house the night of Henry's arrest, refusing to speak to Bruce, refusing to believe what was happening. She had spent 3 weeks in a hotel, then 2 months with a friend, then a month alone in an apartment she couldn't afford. The reckoning came slowly. She read the articles. She watched the news coverage. She talked to the other victims, the ones whose lives had been destroyed by the man she had loved, and eventually she understood. Her father had not betrayed her. He had saved her. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Bruce was sitting in his chair, the old leather chair where he had read to her as a child, where he had held her when her mother died, where he had waited for her to come home from her first date. "Dad." Her voice was small, fragile, the voice of a woman who had lost everything and was only beginning to understand what remained. "I am here, sweetheart. I am sorry. I am so sorry." 6 months later, Leah moved back into the house. She went to therapy. She got a job. She started over. The money was gone. The $500,000, the retirement savings, the inheritance her mother had left. Bruce would never get it back, but he didn't care. He had his daughter, and she had learned something that no amount of money could buy, that love was not about finding someone perfect. It was about recognizing the people who would bleed for you when the mask came off. Bruce Connolly still looks in the mirror sometimes. He sees the scars, the ones on the outside, the ones on the inside. He sees the face of a man who was almost destroyed by a devil in a designer suit. But he also sees something else. He sees a survivor. He sees a father who refused to give up. And he sees a man who learned, at the very last moment, that the most dangerous predators are not the ones who look like monsters. They are the ones who look like saviors. At Vanishes, we uncover the truth behind the names. Henry Harold, or whatever name he is using next, in the face of greed, he could be anyone. The question is, would you give your daughter a second chance?